In a time where whispers of war rustled through England's green and pleasant lands, there lay Senlac Hill near Hastings Place that would soon bear witness to an unprecedented clash between two worlds as different from each other as the Norman conquest itself. As dawn broke with its gentle light upon Godwin's face, he felt a familiar chill in his bones despite standing under the warm sun filtering through ancient trees. The damp morning air wrapped around him like an uninvited blanket, and seemed to hum with anticipation of what was yet to come, ere day that would be etched into history by bloodshed rather than harvest yields or trade agreements. The Norman cavalry, armed in steel and ambition, were mere shadows on the horizon as Godwin took a momentary respite from stoking his forge back home to tend to duties of allegiance to King Harold, or man he saw not just as sovereign, but almost like kin. The Saxon soldier's breath materialized into misty clouds before him, and with each exhalation Godwin envisioned the green fields that had nurtured his family through countless seasons, now silent in expectation of a day they could no longer contain their own sons within or without its grasping soil. Godwin tightened the grip on his wooden shield, or constant companion, since he was able to carry it with dignity, despite never having wielded one before the call came from across the sea, and through years of discontent built in Europe's heartlands had driven a people who now sought not only conquest but survival. As thoughts turned toward his home once more, Godwin felt an unsettling sensation that knotted deep within him. This battle might well be their final stand before succumbing to the Norman tide of change, or force as relentless and transformative as time itself on its perpetual march forward or backward. Beyond Senlac Hill, where English feared, stood shoulder to shoulder in a formidable line that stretched for miles like an unbroken chain across the chalky earth of France's coastal plains. Near battleground Hastings, day had arrived when such unity would face its ultimate test. The Saxon heart ached with memories of peaceful mornings now overshadowed by this impending confrontation. Godwin could almost hear the whispers carried on a breeze that once sang lullabies to his children and promised tomorrows filled with simple joys like laughter ringing through hallways or hands held in tender embrace. With each beat of time, those memories grew fainter as urgency demanded Godwin's full attention, not just for himself, but the countless others who had shared his fate this day and whose stories would now blend into history, untold chapters deep. A narrative threaded with courage yet shadowed by loss. The Norman hordes, led firmly at their helm, was William of Normandy, a man Godwin knew little about but felt compelled to respect as he recognized the same desire for legacy that had driven his own ancestors through generations before him, ambition intertwined with an unyielding sense of purpose born out from lands where culture and language were already alien strangers. As Godwin's thoughts wandered, they came to rest upon the face of Harold, or visage whether beaten yet resolute, as he stood before his men atop a hill just like Senlac Hill, but now far across the sea in this foreign land where English and Norman blood would soon mix with unforeseen consequences. Godwin felt an echo within himself, recognizing that although worlds apart on opposite sides of Channel, they were bound by shared hopes for their people's future, a common thread woven through the fabric of a nation divided yet yearning to be whole once more under one ruler and in one tongue. Saxon or Norman, the soldier knew then, as he stared into battlefield skies that promised not sunshine but storm clouds on impending frays at dawn's first light, that the outcome of this conquest could mean salvation for some while heralding a new era fraught with uncertainty and strife. As Godwin gazed toward an uncertain horizon, he knew his breath had become part of something greater than himself, every puff washed away by wind as if to erase him from the scene, but also etched into history's vast tapestry for posterity that might someday seek understanding in its depths. The Norman cavalry would soon charge, and Godwin knew he must stand ready, his heart a steady drumbeat against which no war cry could. As dusk settled over his homeland, and the twilight embraced him like a cloak of impending doom, Godwin found himself amidst an unsettling calm before what promised to be one of history's most cataclysmic battles. The air was tense with whispers of fate as men hurried back from distant shores bearing news that threatened the very fabric of his world, or tidal wave of change brought upon by Norman ambition and a relentless pursuit for power across their shared history's bridge, now known only as Senlac Hill. Even on such somber evenings, when he could afford himself no respite from contemplation, The soldier within Godwin fought to remain vigilant amidst his dreaming thoughts of what lay ahead of battlefield, where allegiance was tested not by sword or shield, but by one's readiness for upheaval. As night cloaked him in darkness and solitude brought forth a rare tranquillity, he sought counsel with the elders who spoke solemnly beneath flickering torches of wisdom passed down through generations or testament to resilience against foreign rule that once seemed an endless siege upon Saxon lands. It was here, at this very council table, where Godwin's resolve solidified like iron tempered in the forges, understanding now more than ever what lay ahead, a confrontation not just of arms but ideals and identities intertwined by conquest's heavy-handed Norman foe to his right side, yet an uncertain future that teetered on balance. Underneath veils of uncertainty stretching across the Channel, Godwin's soul was inextricably linked with a destiny he could not escape, as if every heartbeat resonated through time and would echo into eternity or soldier for an age that sought to melt two worlds under one crown. The very thought of Norman horsemen charging across his fields, bearing steel-clad visages like harbingers of upheaval against the Saxons' simple ways, filled him with a dread he had not known before. Yet in this fear lay an invincible spirit forged through centuries spent standing firm at Hastings' shadowed gates. Each morning brought forth new missives from England, letters bearing news of skirmishes along the borders, where tensions flared like sparks on dry kindling, presaging larger conflagrations that threatened to engulf them all in smoke and ash if not swiftly quenched by negotiation or might. And while Godwin was no diplomat but a warrior firster defender of his people's rightful rule against the encroaching Norman tide, he understood now more than ever that only through unity could Saxon hearts endure and prevail over strangers who sought to rewrite history at their behest. The coming dawn brought forth not just light, but a looming presence on Godwin's horizon, a test of his allegiance as Norman forces marched with unsettling purpose toward the heartlands where he held fast against them before, now standing in quiet solidarity alongside fellow Saxons who shared this momentous breath-holding. For within their chests beat hearts that yearned not for conquest, but survival and preservation of a way of life so dearly cherished at a Norman threat to the very essence of being they were born into, baptized as, and died defending with honour beneath England's verdant skies. As Godwin stood firm by Senlac Hill upon this fateful day, when fate would demand their courage or cede it unto others, he looked beyond warriors clashing in a dance of destiny toward the eyes that sought him as comrade in arms and kindred spirit. Their gaze met across fields where once stood oak saplings now bearing witness to conflict's cruel testament. This moment was their crucible, forging memories, not just in blood, but resolute hearts beating with a single purpose to protect the legacy of an England unyielded by foreign dominion. Within his chest lay a heart that knew no retreat when faced with adversity so starkly against its foundation. Each pulse washed away fears, and every beat etched into history's vast expanse for those who would come after to find solace in tales of the resilience born from this struggle or Norman invasion fought not merely on land, but within souls seeking identity amidst conquest's shadow. As Godwin stood among his brethren, ready at dawn's first light with unwavering intent, as they faced their foe across a hill that bore silent witness to countless battles, before a testament in chapter 3 of our tale woven through time's delicate threads, the sun dipped below England's rolling hills, leaving a pastel palette in its softening sky as night began to claim dominion over daylight once more. The air carried the scent of rain on distant thunderheads and whispered secrets among fallen leaves. It was almost like nature itself held its breath for what lay ahead at dawn's lighter, silent sentinel against history's relentless march forward or retreat into shadow, as nations sought their will upon the world's stage. Godwin stood resolute on Senlac Hill with his men gathered around him. They shared a camaraderie that was forged in fire and tempered by bloodshed or brotherhood born of necessity, yet unyielding to its callous hand when it came time to weep, not war. As their eyes met across the field, where only oak saplings had once grown tender shoots towards heaven's embrace before those very lives were claimed in defending homeland's hearth, their resolve was as unwavering as England itself, an island nation that would neither cower nor fall to foreign rule. Beneath his gaze, the men rallied together. They had all been born from this soil and baptized by its waters, raised not merely in body, but nurtured within a culture where every man was expected to stand as guardian against invaders, threatening their way of life or heritage passed down through generations that now demanded the ultimate sacrifice. Their hearts beat with unity's rhythm. Each thump resonated like an echo across time, promising tales not just in blood, but bravery and honor etched into England's legacy for those who would seek solace within its chronicless or story of resilience that had blossomed amidst conquest's shadow. As the night deepened around them like a cloak woven from threads spun by fate itself, Godwin took in one last look at his comrades before settling upon their makeshift camp below Senlac Hill or mistake of humanity united against encroaching darkness, with only hope as its beacon. They had faced the unknown across a hill that bore silent witness to countless battles fought beneath these very same skies, where blood and tears mixed indistinguishably into soil's nurturing embracer, testament of their struggles for freedom's preservation throughout history. Each victory etched within England like the grooves in its ancient stones. Their hearts were heavy with memories, too painful to bear alone, yet, as one collective conscience that understood no retreat when faced with such stark adversity so diametrically opposed to every foundation upon which they stood, or Norman invasion fought not merely on land, but within souls seeking identity amidst conquest's shadow. Each man held fast to the belief in a future where England was unyielded by foreign dominion, and as Godwin looked towards this vision of their struggles' enduring legacy for his men beside him, silent sentinel above them felt not sorrow, but pride that had been seared into its very essence. Beneath the watchful eyes of stars now twinkling like distant lighthouses, guiding ships safely to port, Godwin whispered words meant only for those who would carry forth England's unbroken spirit long after his own mortal coil had ceased spinning her final testament, before he too succumbed unto the night's embrace. He spoke of a land that was evergreen in its resolve to stand tall against invaders, and where every man found purpose not just as warriors, but guardians over an ancient legacy, whose roots delved deep into bedrock's heart or spirit, immortalized through tales told by fireside, with history's narrative entrusted for safe keeping within the souls of those who would listen. The men lay down to rest their weary bodies as Godwin joined them in slumber beneath Senlac Hill. His mind wandered back across time's vast expanse, where echoes of a distant past resonated with every beat that had shaped England's enduring soul, a nation whose children would continue the legacy forged within these very fields, carrying forward stories steeped in courage and unyielding defiance. As their breaths fell into syncopation like verses flowing from a bard's lips upon an ancient stage, before long-gone crowds of kin, he knew that when dawn broke again across this hallowed land centuries hence, there would be new guardians ready to stand where old ones had stood with unwavering resolve. And so in chapter 4 of our tale, under Senlac's watchful gaze rested young Thomas, a lad whose heart was as stout and enduring as his mother's tales spoke it to be. His father had been among those fabled few who stood on this very hillside with the men before him, his legacy woven into their blood like threads in England's great tapestry of resilience that stretched through ages, each thread a story spun from courage and defiance against encroaching darkness. Thomas had often sat by his father's side as he recounted tales to the kinfolk gathered around hearth fires deep into winter evenings, when night seemed an insurmountable chasm between England's sons and daughters, separating them from their ancestral heroes who defended these same rolling hills against relentless foes. The air would grow heavy with recollections of battles fiercely fought, where the valorous stood shoulder to shoulder. There were men forged in unity, by necessity a bond transcending mere companionship, and routed deeply within their shared histories, bedrock, each tale a vibrant hue painting England's soul. It was upon such evenings that young Thomas felt the weight of his legacy as firmly about him as did he feel it from his father, a lineage passed down like torches in perpetual twilight, casting long shadows and beams alike to guide those who would inherit these stories' sacred flame. The boy knew well that every echo within the walls of their modest home was a whispered secret meant only for him. His father spoke of England not just as country, but guardianship, a relentless vigil over lands and spirits alike, where each generation had its role to play in continuing this sacred charge. Thomas's heart swelled with pride, yet ached with an unspoken yearning that he might one day rise above the ordinary rites of passage into something greater than a mere steward, but as a guardian himself, an embodiment of England's indomitable will to persevere, much like his forebears. As years turned their pages, and Thomas blossomed in strength, oath of body, and character under the tutelage of old soldiers who had themselves been children once upon these verdant fields where history's pulse beat strongest beneath Senlac Hill's shadowed watchfulness, he began to understand that his life was but a single thread interwoven within an everlasting tapestry. The men spoke often in hushed reverence of the past and with solemn dedication toward tomorrow. They did not see themselves as merely passing on traditions, they were continuing England's living legacy, ensuring its spirit never dimmed beneath any siege or shadow cast upon their shores by foreign tempests. One eve amidst a gathering of the aged and battle-weary men atop Senlac Hill's embrace lay Thomas beside them, as they shared in tales that transcended time, where every word was imbued with life's essence, ere narrative flowering within their collective memory, as his father had done for him before he passed into the eternal night of rest beneath Senlac Hill's embrace himself. Numb Thomas listened and learned, though each tale seemed a mirror to his soul, reflecting desires not only inherited but kindled afresh from deep wellsprings within England's enduring heart. The men spoke often, yet little they knew that the world beyond their rolling pastures had been irrevocably altered by wars and strife now unfolding on distant shores, a reminder of an age where such tales could no longer be told solely for comfort, but as a clarion call to arms, should it come again. Though he understood not these impending threats, nor their origins, that lay in the broader world's tumultuous expanse beyond England's borders, Thomas felt within his chest an echo of resolve, like countless others before him who had found purpose amidst peril, a resonance with each heartbeat pulsing through time itself. The narrative woven by these stories became a tapestry that embraced not just the valorous exploits, but also solemn vows to never yield, for England's spirit was eternal as it had been since men first dared stand against invaders upon Senlac Hill, or defiance passed down through whispers and roars alike. As dawn broke over this storied land centuries hence, with new guardians ready at the helm to carry forward tales steeped in courage, Thomas would know he was but one amongst these torch-bearers of tradition, though his name might not eternally grace history's scroll, as Thomas felt his heartbeat sinking in rhythm with these narratives, as they spoke them into existence once again under this great sentinel structure that had seen empires rise and fall, yet still stood proudly against time's relentless march forward. They were a congregation of souls, each carrying their own tales spun from the threads of valorous feats achieved by ancestors who braved not just Hadrian's wall but also unforeseen adversities that would be recorded in volumes yet to come as chronicles penned for posterity. As Thomas listened intently and felt himself drawn into these stories, his thoughts drifted towards an era where the very concept of war was alien, when knights jousted under banners untouchable by foreign swordsmen's steel, and serfs tilled fields with a sense that their labors fed not just mouths but also spirits. He yearned for such simplicity, yet he knew well enough it would never return to him nor his children's generation, as the world was inching closer towards tumult beyond these verdant borders. Whispers of discontent and strife had already begun filtering through England's heartlands like ominous clouds on a clear sky. That night he lay awake beneath star-kissed canopy, pondering upon the tales his grandfather spoke, those which held not just fanciful exploits, but also lessons of resilience and resolve against all odds. For even as men's lives might be unpredictable like rivers changing course through seasons, their spirits remained steadfast in defending hearth and home. Thomas imagined himself standing tall upon Senlac Hill alongside his ancestors whose echoes lingered within the stones that stood guard over England's sacred ground. Each tale was a thread knit into an enduring tapestry of courage passed down through lineages, with every generation adding its own hues and patterns to this historical weave. As chapters unfolded in his mind's eye, like parchment unrolled by the hands that once held it centuries ago atop Senlac Hill, under a sky where darkness melted into dawn's light only hours before defeat was written as victory through sheer will and iron-willed unity, Thomas felt an indomitable spirit awaken within him. It whispered of times when men stood not just to defend but also in hope for peace, understanding that even amidst the direst conflicts their hearts could still hold a lantern aglow with compassion towards foes alike and unlike themselves. These were lessons interwoven into tales wherein honor was as revered as valor. On such days when skies would open up so wide it felt like they might drown the world in tears, Thomas found solace knowing that each raindrop carried whispers of his ancestors, spirits, a reminder he too had an inner fortitude to face whatever lay ahead with resolve and grace. His grandmother's tales were particularly poignant. She spoke not just from her own lips, but the very essence of England itself, as if each word was dipped in honeyed mead, warming his soul against life's oft-bitter chill. And so, on this autumn day by Hadrian's Wall, where he stood with kin and kindred spirits who shared tales born from the loom of history, stories that would be recounted for generations hence to come amidst laughter or in hushed reverence under twilight's embrace as flickering torchlight danced upon ancient stones, Thomas knew his spirit was tethered not just to this land, but also through these narratives. As he shared tales of yore with wide-eyed listeners, eager for the wisdom wrapped within their words, each story that left lips imparting courage or laughter became a legacy immortalized in England's heartbeats, and his own would be no exception, as Thomas knew himself to become but one more guardian of these stories, through which tradition was both honored and carried forward. The world beyond the verdant moors now seemed an ocean away, yet it held sway over in Chapter 6 of Thomas's tale beneath Hadrian's ancient barrier, where time seemed to whisper secrets long forgotten. A cool breeze carried voices rich with the essence of yesteryears into his eager ears. It was late afternoon when he sat on an aged stone bench as hues of amber and gold painted the sky, the afterglow from dusk's retreat mingling in the air, just as it did among men who gather around him this day by Hadrian's Wall under a waning moon. Thomas remembered tales his grandmother had shared with such vivid detail that they seemed to have leapt straight out of England's very soul. Her words were like the warmth from hearth fires, touching every corner of one's spirit and inviting it into a cocoon of comfort. As he sat there now by Hadrian's Wall with his grandmother no longer beside him, but in spirit as present company to these meetings that had taken root at this very place through the centuries, was an unspoken blessing from England herself, weaving her history and legacy into every shared memory among Thomas' kin. The stories were diverse. Some spoke of valorous knights who once stood guard along Hadrian's Wall just as stoically in their twilight years before crossing this great divide to the afterlife, men whose tales had been told from one generation to another, surviving through time like seeds carried on wind currents. Another story unfolded about a mischievous sprite that resided within Hadrian's Wall. It was said her gibbles could be heard as she danced in the moonlight, when no eye beheld her, and footprints left upon stones were but temporary marks, soon erased by morning's dew. Thomas had always been drawn to these stories of courageous hearts who faced their final journey with nobility, or tales that brought a smile even amidst sorrowful times, for within the folds of every narrative lay both pain and joy intermingled like threads in England's rich tapestry, each strand vital for its completion. As Thomas regaled his audience this evening by Hadrian's Wall with stories from years gone past, when he was but a boy listening to elderly folk recounting adventures that shaped their kin and the land they loved so dearly, it felt as though those very words were breathing life into him. He spoke of times long ago, where travelers would traverse Hadrian's Wall on pilgrimages, seeking solace or blessings from sacred sites like St. Peter's Church at Laughterpool, and about a time when traders brought exotic spices to the market in Bonacensolway that tickled one's nose with their intoxicating scent, transporting them back across seas for just moments before they returned home again. As tales unfurled like sails caught by a gentle wind upon which young ears embarked on voyages through England's storied past, Thomas felt that the world beyond Hadrian's Wall was but an ocean away, yet somehow within arm's reach of his heart and mind, where such wonders could always be found. The stories became not only relics from bygone days, when he spoke them into existence once more to eager listeners who hung on every word as though they were gold dust. For in these tales lay the treasures that would endure within England's heartbeat forevermore, and Thomas had become a guardian of such riches. The stories continued well past dusk, when stars began their watch above. It was not merely an evening by Hadrian's Wall, but rather one where history itself seemed to unfold before the eyes that watched with rapt attention. And as they shared laughter and tears, knowing glances were exchanged. For even though no grandmother stood at his side now in this moment under starlight's watchful gaze by Hadrian's Wall, Thomas felt a continuation of an unbroken chain that wove through the land like ivy. As he concluded one such tale, which spoke about how once upon time two villages had been divided over trivial matters leading to long-standing grudges, but were later brought together again by fate's hand. His voice was softer than before. This story's ending sang a note of reconcile and togetherness that felt even more poignant beneath the watchful eyes of Hadrian's wall. It had been decided then, as generations have passed since those days long ago, where hearts once hardened by time's unyielding march were softened anew over shared meals or simple companionship on quiet walks along verdant moors and gently rolling hills, that tonight was dedicated entirely to the tale she had entrusted him, a legend not just about two villages divided by misunderstanding and pride, but also united in their shared humanity when calamity struck them all. A story that wove itself into his soul as he recounted it night after night. Alois listened, eyes half closed against the encroaching darkness of her thoughts, her grandmother's tales, not just stories but lifelines tethering her to Thomas and their timeless connection under Hadrian's watchful gaze. Their story was about Ethelred village, where every man bore a sword, pride as sharp as the blades they wielded. Standing in opposition were men from Brithulm, whose strength lay not on fields of battle, but within their craftsmanship and trade routes that crisscrossed through fertile valleys. The feud began over access to water source, a trivial matter when one considers it could have led the two villages unto ruin had animosity prevailed unchecked, a fate forewarned by an ancient seer whose prophecy was nearly forgotten in time until Thomas's grandmother found her faded pages. A chance encounter between Ethelred's fiercest warrior and Brithulm's most skilled smith had sparked the first ember of discord or dispute over a fisherman who claimed to have caught his catch in waters now considered sacred by both villages, for centuries unspoken. Yet beyond their quarrel lay an imminent threat. Dark clouds loomed on distant horizons, promising not just rain, but tempestuous fury that could ravage crops and homes alike if left ignored or nurtured into a storm of anger. Between these men a reflection mirrored in Thomas's grandmother's eyes as she closed her journal, the weighty silence punctuating their shared resolve to find peace. It was under Hadrian's wall, where they met by fate's design, two seemingly disparate paths that entwined, when a festival of lights united not just lantern glow, but hearts too long secluded from one another. The festivities had drawn villagers near and far, their laughter mingling with the crackle of bonfires as they danced in celebration under starlight's watchful gaze of sight that even time forgot to mar by its beauty. And there amidst shared tales and warmth from firesides, a silent understanding took root between Ethelred's wary smith, an acknowledgment of the folly found within pride when one considers how often it blinds as much as guides her, lesson learned beneath Hadrian's ancient stone. Their unity was tested not by swords drawn, but with shared endeavors that bridged divides in daily life. Ethelred's warrior men did a cart pulled through the mud and rain, while Brithulm's smith forged tools to rebuild after tempest's wrath had passed. The villages began trading once more, their common goods flowed like river currents, strong yet free of obstruction. Water now shared between them became not just sustenance, but a symbol united in purpose and survival as well. Seasons cycled from bloom to frost until the day when Hadrian's wall itself bore witness once again his time by chance or perhaps destiny. Their paths crossed upon an evening where Ethelred's swordsmith sought timber for repair while Brithulm needed leather. They conversed not about war nor trade, but on stories of kin and the land that had shaped them. Thomas' grandmother shared tales from her youth as they talked beneath a sky painted with promise by stars uncountable, their laughter mingling like threads, in weaving fabric on hand, holding wood for Ethelred's craftsmanship, while another grasped the tools of Brithulm. As years wove onward and time's relentless march continued its journey through days both bright and dark, Thomas came to understand that Ethelred and Brithulm continued their exchange of timber for leather beneath a celestial tapestry, each star's twinkle narrating tales lost to time, but preserved in memory like ancient runes etched into weathered stones. The bonds formed that evening were not marked by the clanging of swords or the rallying cries echoing through fields marred with bloodshed. They blossomed quietly, delicately intertwining lives as ivy embraces an old oak's trunk, resilient and patient. As seasons ebbed and flowed like tides upon the shore of existence, their friendship deepened beyond superficial camaraderie into a kinship born not from blood, but shared experiences that shaped them as indelibly as rivers carve valleys through ancient landscapes. Ethelred marvelled at Britholm's Storasich painting vivid pictures of their village before Waugh's shadow loomed, his grandmother recounting the verdant fields ripe with golden wheat and babbling brooks that once danced beneath a clear blue sky. The tales transported them back to times when laughter was as plentiful as harvests were bounteous, where children played in sunlight, their shadows long and carefree on cobbled streets now silent with the passage of time. Thomas listened intently, absorbing every detail like parched earth welcomes a gentle rain, slowly filling his mind's wellspring, from which sprang forth understanding that life was not solely about enduring hardships, but celebrating moments as sweet and fleeting as dew upon morning grasses at dawn's first light. Through seasons of plenty, Ethelred saw in Britholm the same tenacity his grandmother had shown, a spirit unbroken despite years under iron heel that sought to crush their very souls into submission's cold ground. Her stories instilled within him an indomitable will. He realized then and there, amidst timber's warm scent mingling with the cool evening breeze, and tales of yore as old as time itself whispered by ancient stones beneath moonlit skies, that his existence was not just about survival, but living a life worthy to be remembered through generations. Their friendship transcended mere tradesmen's camaraderie. It became an alliance forged in the crucible of shared humanity, two brothers in spirit united by more than circumstance or need, their bond as immutable and enduring as Hadrian's wall itself. And just like that wall stood silently observing countless seasons come full circle from bloom to frost in an eternal cycle of renewal, they too understood the ebb and flow within themselves was not a solitary journey, but part of grander tapestry, where every thread woven with care interlaced into patterns vast as history itself. One day Ethelred took Britholm's hand, their fingers entwined like tendrils, seeking sunlight and water, reaching out to feed the roots they had nourished together through time's endless march, their hearts beating in harmonious rhythm as if echoed from ages past when drums of war once resonated, but now only quiet whispers filled his mind. He looked into Britholm's eyes and saw not just a fellow craftsman or even merely an ally against the common enemy. They were each other's mirror, reflecting back their own essence, two hearts coming together to form wholesome souls bound by shared memories, dreams unspoken yet understood between them. Together they set forth upon Hadrian's wall once more, not as adversaries but companions no longer. The world saw Ethelred and Britholm through lenses of division or conflict, instead viewed their footsteps marching side by side in solidarity, hand in hand. They paused at every milestone they had crossed before it ever seemed plausible. A shared meal with kin from distant lands, who spoke words as tender and nourishing to the spirit like hearty stew warming on winter hearths, tales of their ancestors' strength imbued within Ethelred's bloodline, echoing his own resilience, as time etched its mark upon them both physically, but more crucially in soul and essence. Ethelred knew that the wall itself bore witness to transformations far grander than any fortress built of stone or mortar could ever hope. It stood as a testament not just to division, but also unity's power. Ethelred and Britholm continued their journey beyond Hadrian's wall as if it had never been a barrier in their lives, but instead just another horizon to explore with hearts unshackled from discord. They shared tales around fires that seemed alive beneath the night sky, or canvas of stars observing silently above them. One evening brought forth an invitation for feast and fellowship, extending towards a distant kin they had not seen in decades, offering Ethelred's hand to join hands with his ancestors through this simple yet profound gathering. It was their way of reconnecting the threads of history that seemed frayed by war. They traveled far into lands where old friends and family awaited them like a long-lost season returning, eager for stories told in whispers, as if passing down wisdom from one generation to another through shared meals under moonlit skies. In these moments with his kin, Ethelred experienced the strength of lineage that flowed deep within him, a silent river whose waters ran clear and strong despite its age-old journey across rugged terrains. The tales told by elders spoke not just of battles fought, but also of unity's resilience. It was as though every word weaved into the very air he breathed, reminding Ethelred that his blood carried within him a legacy far richer than any single life could own alone or apart. As seasons passed and their camaraderie deepened beyond mere companionship to something resembling kinship itself, or bond not just between individuals, but across the tapestry of shared human experience stretching back through time, Ethelred realized He was walking a path that melded his past with an uncertain future. The wall had witnessed their transformation and now bore silent testimony to unity's power over division, its stones no longer just markers for separation, but foundations upon which bridges could be built across the widest of divides. In time, Ethelred recognized that his journey was not solely a personal one. It had become intertwined with many others like him, a collective pilgrimage towards understanding and kinship beyond borders drawn by ignorance or fear. The echoes from Hadrian's wall seemed to whisper their names in a language of shared humanity, guiding Ethelred forward into a world where his essence could merge seamlessly with Brython's without losing sight of who he had been and what lay ahead for him as an individual. Amidst this journey through landscapes both literal and metaphorical, they often found themselves in places echoing their homelands, butte valleys caressed by wind-kissed rivers that flowed like silver threads across emerald meadows where wildflowers danced with the breeze. It was here Ethelred learned to listen for nature's quiet strength, realizing his own resilience mirrored in these enduring elements of earth and sky. They taught him harmony could exist beyond conflict's shadow, when one would only learn to hear its call without fear or suspicion clouding the air. As Ethelred continued this pilgrimage with Brython, he carried within his heart a treasure trove of experiences or wealth not counted in coins, but measured by moments lived and shared deeply. They had discovered that their bond was as unbreakable as it seemed during times when steel met flesh. Their laughter became the melody to which life danced around them, filling each day with the vibrant hues once thought dimmed too long ago under war's oppressive gloom. With every sunset that painted skies in brilliant shades of hope and dusk's gentle descent into sleepy nights holding the promise of tomorrow's possibilities, Ethelred felt a growing sense within him. He was becoming not just an Ethelred, but Brython's counterpart. They were no longer simply two hearts meeting in mutual understanding and respect for one another as individual entities seeking companionship against the backdrop of history's vast canvas. They had become complements to each other that could stand wholly united or apart without losing their essence, a duality strengthened by shared humanity. One such night, when they stood side by side upon an ancient hill overlooking lands where rivers mirrored the sky in shimmering ribbons of light, Ethelred and Brython felt unity's embrace wrap around them like warmth on a crisp autumn eve. In that moment, as their hands clasped tightly together beneath twinkling constellations, bearing silent witness to this newfound harmony, Ethelred knew he had journeyed in Chapter 10 of their journey through history's embrace and heartache. Ethelred stood with Brython as they watched a night sky ablaze in celestial fireworks or firmament painted by gods themselves to celebrate unity found amidst strife. The ancient hill on which the two now shared silence beneath stars of old became their sanctuary for moments like these, rare instances where peace could be tasted between souls who had known only conflict and division before they met upon its sacred earth. Beneath a dome arched with stories untold, they reminisced about the lives that spanned centuries, those whose names were etched in stone monuments to valor yet whispered no tales of love or companionship as theirs now would be. Ethelred traced fingers over intricate carvings on a nearby obelisk before turning his gaze back upon Brython, who stood with quiet strength beside him like an unyielding oak amidst tempests that once ravaged these lands. "I know not of the stars' intentions," Ethelred murmured softly against Brython's chest, as they clasped hands, in a bond transcending time itself, "but I feel them weave around us like threads pulling towards our joined future." His voice carried across their shared silence their tender lullaby to calm the past's echo. Brython smiled with warmth that seemed too grand for mortal lips. It was a smile of ages and loves lost yet found again in these stolen moments on an ancient hill where history breathed life into tales once thought forever gone under war's dark shadow. "And I, Ethelred," Brython replied gently, with eyes reflecting the constellations' twinkling light above them and the same shimmer from a nearby brook that mirrored not just their hands, but also history itself, flow of time unbroken by tears or joy. The night air wrapped around Ethelred like velvet, carrying whispers of ancient battles fought with hearts intertwined in courage as much as steel and bloodshed. He closed his eyes for a moment to let the past's weight find its resting place beside their shared dreams or future unmarred by war's cruel scars upon humanity, where love like this could flourish without fear or haste. Here we stand, Ethelred said, as if in answer to an invisible question posed only within his heart's deepest chambers, as two halves of one wholer testament not just to our companionship, but also the enduring strength found when different souls find unity. Brithom nodded once more, her eyes holding promise and a gentle understanding as vast as the horizon before them. "And here we will walk together towards that future," she responded softly, like an assurance whispering through Ethelred's thoughts, or vow to seek out every sunrise with hope cradled in their joined arms, forging paths untrodden by those who had known only strife. The hill beneath them seemed less a place of battle, and more a crossroads between what was lost and what could be regained at her threshold. They now stepped over together towards horizons coloured not with the muted tones of history's long march, but rather with the vibrant hues born from love's unfading warmth. As dawn approached, threatening to reclaim night after their embrace had drawn them into daylight once more, Ethelred and Brithom understood that they were not just companions bound by shared humanity's resilience, but rather allies in the very definition of what it meant to overcome. Their bond was no fragile glass shattered easily. Instead, like a phoenix reborn from ashes it soared, with strength born out of love's fiery core and tempered by time's relentless hammering upon their souls. With each step taken hand in hand across the hallowed earth that bore witness to history itself, they became not just partners, but pillars within a world healing its wounds, or testament for all who would listen of love's power as potent and enduring as any legacy left by ancestors. For Ethelred knew now with certainty in his heart's quiet chamber that together, united against the relentless march of days turned to dust beneath their feet, he could face not just Brithom, but life itself with courage tempered within love's forge and a spirit undimmed. And as they reached the bottom of the hill, where daylight welcomed, as they stood at the bottom of the hill, where daylight welcomed them with open arms, Ethelred and Brithom shared a moment that transcended mere companionship. It was as if time itself had paused to honor their union, or symbol not just for each other, but also for all those who sought solace in love's embrace. The golden light spilled through the trees above, casting long shadows upon them like an audience of ancient spirits that acknowledged every act they performed beneath its gaze. Their journey had begun under a sky painted with stars and whispered secrets when Ethelred first met Brithom in his youth, as he sought refuge from societal pressures, not yet knowing the strength found within love's gentle hold on him. Years passed like moments suspended between heartbeats, until one fateful evening when their paths crossed by chance at a small tavern where tales of old and present mingled freely among those who dared to dream aloud while drink poured from earthenware pots, the air thick with stories yet untold. That night was different. It felt as if fate had conspired in their favor, a meeting charged with something ethereal that set ablaze a connection so profound they barely recognized themselves when morning came to claim its due share of darkness back into being again, and the world around them began anew. Their bond, forged from mutual understanding beyond words spoken aloud or actions bold enough in daylight's harsh scrutinizing light, was a testament that love could bridge even history's most chasmic divides when it chose to do so with intention and vulnerability. Both knew this truth as they stood now, not merely survivors of their past trials, but architects crafting hope's beacon for others. As the couple began ascending once more through fields that bore witnesses, whispered secrets from centuries gone by, a place where history's footprint was etched into every blade of grass and stone, unassuming yet resonant with tales long seared upon memory's canvas, they paused before a grove known only to those who had journeyed far enough in the heart. Here stood an ancient oak tree, whose gnarled branches told stories not just about strength, but also surrender, its leaves swaying like old friends, sharing news of distant realms where love, too, dared dream and dance amidst adversity's relentless siege upon hope's tender bloom. Beneath this hallowed guardian, Brithom took Ethelred by the hand, as if to trace his lineage back through countless generations that had sought shelter under its boughs, eyes touched gentle yet firm like an unspoken promise made before spirits themselves could lay claim upon their souls. They shared a quiet laughter echoing amidst rustling foliage, not boisterous, but the kind born from knowing and understanding each other beyond mere acquaintance or fleeting dalliance with life's whimsical turns, like verses woven into an enduring ballad that hummed through their very marrow. The couple continued onward, weaving steps upon a path less trodden, where wildflowers bloomed defiantly against winter's remnants clinging stubbornly to earth's embracer mistake of colors, so vibrant they seemed almost unreal in the face of life's trials and tribulations which often sought only grayscale resolution. Here, under skies that held promise like a blank canvas awaited by painters eager for inspiration yet hesitant to commit their brush strokes, full of world around them whispered tales not just of loss, but also resilience, stories where love's flame flickered in the darkness before surging forth with renewed vigor, illuminating even the darkest night. Together they found solace amidst nature's embracer cocoon woven from shared experiences and emotions too deep for mere words to encapsulate fully within their hearts. Chambers, a sanctuary where love could sing in harmonies, untouched by time's relentless march or society's expectations that sought only conformity over individual expression, an oasis of understanding amidst life's desert sands. The journey now took them across ancient stones once trodden upon not just as travelers, but also witnesses to history, where countless feet had left their imprint before Ethelred and Brithelm's own footsteps joined the eternal dance as silent testament that time might wear away some facades, while others stood proudly against it like monuments dedicated solely for love's enduring essence. Amidst a symphony of rustling leaves and distant melodies carried by winds through ancient trees, Ethelred and Brithelm found themselves standing before an unassuming stone path that meandered deeper into nature's heartland than they had ever traversed. The stones beneath their feet felt cool to the touch, a sharp contrast against skin warmed from hours under relentless sunlight as it sought solace in a gentle evening breeze, carrying whispers of past lives and untold stories with each gust that danced through fields where wildflowers stood tall despite seasons' fickleness. As they followed the stone path deeper into nature's embrace, Ethelred reached out to trace his fingers along a moss-covered boulder, a silent guardian of time and tales untold. Brithelm watched with an affectionate gaze as he did so. In this shared moment between humans lay the seeds for memories that would grow deep within their hearts, intertwining like roots to support one another through trials ahead yet unknown. Their journey led them alongside a clear stream where water's melody sang of purity and renewal, a place forgotten by time itself, as it flowed uninterrupted towards an uncertain horizon beyond verdant meadows stretching beneath twilight skies painted in hues that seemed to capture the very essence of hope. The air held a scent, sweet with petrichor, after light rains, and hints of wild herbs swaying gently along its banks, or perfume so intoxicating it promised rejuvenation, even as their spirits sought solace from life's relentless demands for conformity that often left hearts aching like wounds untended. Ethelred and Brithelm sat upon a fallen log beside the gentle murmur of water, its constant presence offering comfort not just in its sound, but also as an echo to their own enduring bond, born from love's fiery forge, yet tempered with respect like steel refined through trials by fire. As they shared stories and dreams beneath a tapestry woven from threads of silver moonlight filtering through canopy above, their laughter mingled effortlessly in the quiet night air, intertwining melodies that spoke volumes about their journey together without utterance needing to betray its weight upon them. They ventured forth along the narrow trail winding between ancient oaks whose branches whispered secrets from generations past, or testament etched into bark, where history's footprint had lain undisturbed for centuries as leaves bore witness silently, encapsulating tales too profound to be spoken aloud yet felt deeply within souls that sought refuge among roots extending like fingers seeking solace in the earth. Their path eventually led them across an open expanse where stars above seemed eagerly drawn closer by night's enchantment, or celeste zero isle dance choreographed with unparalleled precision, illuminating darkness as if nature herself sought to reclaim forgotten corners of existence while imparting wisdom upon those willing hearts that dared venture beneath her gaze. Ethelred and Brithelm shared a look between them, as silent understanding born not just from their journey together, but also an acknowledgment that even amidst the grandeur above, it was love's simple light which offered guidance through life's unpredictable tempests. As they continued towards distant mountains capped with snow-like crowns bestowed upon kings long past, a realm where time stood still yet ever present, as seasons cycled from birth to death and back again, their hearts beat in tandem, echoing a rhythm that spoke of shared resilience even amidst life's relentless march towards unknown horizons. The wind carried their laughter across valleys where rivers carved paths through the earth, as if seeking solace from within themselves, while mountains stood sentinel over realms untouched by modernity's grasp or haven for those who sought refuge in nature's embrace rather than human constructs that often dictated conformist ideals. And so they ventured forth, hand in hand, through winding trails carved upon the earth itself, as if their steps were destined to be etched alongside countless others before them at testament, not just for themselves, but also as witnesses standing tall amidst time's relentless march forward, yet offering solace beyond words that could ever fully encapsulate its depth within human hearts. As twilight gave way to the starlit night, Ethelred and Britham settled upon a hilltop overlooking lands, both familiar and strange, a place where horizons stretched as Ethelred and Britham watched over lands, both familiar and strange from their hilltop sanctuary, a place where horizons stretched into infinity. They felt a profound sense of peace that was rare to find in these tumultuous times. The world below seemed so distant, as if it were but another life lived by other souls whose stories mingled with the rustling leaves and chirping crickets around them. The night air carried whispers from generations past, tales of love interwoven like threads through time's tapestry that had led these two wanderers to this very spot beneath the cosmos. Watchful eyes, in silence punctuated only by their shared breathing and heartbeats, a rhythm as timeless as the earth itself, they allowed themselves a moment of introspection, pondering on life's fragility juxtaposed with nature's enduring strength. Their journey had taken them through bustling cities where steel towers reached for heaven but could not touch eternity, over rolling fields that bore witness to countless harvests yet knew the bitter taste of unrequited love and loss, or stark contrast against their own tale, one written in forgiveness. As Ethelred's fingers traced circles around Britham's palm beneath a canopy illuminated by stars that had watched over countless such couples before them, his heart whispered promises of perseverance through life's seasons and beyond the eventual return to dust. The bond they shared was not merely one forged in present companionship, but rooted deeply within history's embrace. It resonated with a love that transcended time, or legacy etched into their very souls, like runes of an ancient language known only by those who dared journey through life's tempests. The couple had often debated the nature of existence since they met in youth under auspicious skies. Ethelred was a scholar whose mind sought solace within books, and Britham, with eyes as deep blue as twilight seas, a poet who found truth not just on paper, but woven into verses that danced like leaves caught in the wind. They were two halves of one whole, their souls intertwined so intricately that to unravel them would be akin to splitting night from day or winter from spring, impossible feats rendered moot by love's omnipresence which held no regard for such divisions. As the seasons had changed around them from verdant springs of new beginnings to amber autumns that heralded endings and renewals in equal measure, as their journey continued, each step forward on winding trails carved upon this living earth, a testament not just for themselves, but as witnesses standing tall amidst time's relentless march. They understood now more than ever how ephemeral human endeavors were when placed against the backdrop of eternity. Yet they chose to embrace life with all its uncertainties and challenges, like sailors embarking on voyages across seas unknown, ever hopeful for discoveries that would enrich their souls. Dawn was approaching as tendrils of light began weaving through the night's dark tapestry, promising to break free from its hold upon worldly affairs and bring forth new day's promise amidst tales spun beneath this cosmic dome, with hearts lighter than feathered quills, on parchment yet as unyielding as mountains, standing sentinel over realms forgotten by modernity. Ethelred and Britham prepared to continue their pilgrimage through existence, told for a voyage not for the faint of heart, but only those with spirits willing to seek refuge in nature's embrace rather than human constructs that often dictated conformist ideals. And thus they ventured forth from hilltop overlook, hand in hand down winding trails carved upon this living earther, path destined not just for them, but echoed by countless others who had sought solace in nature's refuge through ages, long gone and yet ever present. As the sun rose high above, casting its golden light across all that surveyed with impartial eyes that knew no prejudice nor favoritism, Ethelred and Britham realized their shared journey was but a single thread within an endless weave of humanity's collective odyssey through time. As they walked, the morning dew still clung to petals, as if reluctant to part from nature's tender cares, a reminder that while life moved inexorably forward like rivers cutting canyons in chapter 14 of their shared tale underneath heaven's vast expanse, Ethelred and Brithom found themselves standing before a forest so dense that even whispers seemed to lose direction within its depths. The ancient trees herein stood like wise old sages who had witnessed the turning of countless seasons, their leaves whispering secrets with every rustle in response to life's ebb and flow around them. The siblings approached this forest knowing that it was a place where they could shed their worldly concerns, even if just for an afternoon's respite. The air felt different here, charged not only with earth, but also by unseen magic known well in legends sung softly at campfires and old bards' tales. As Ethelred brushed away a loose strand of hair that had escaped his braid, a rare comfort for someone who often let their locks grow freely like the ivy along these very trees, Bristol felt an inexplicable sense of peace settle within him, as though he could trust this world more than ever. It was here amongst the forest's greenery that they sought wisdom from a brook whose waters danced merrily over smooth pebbles and boulders with equal abandon for all creatures it encountered, a testament to life's inherent joy, regardless of form or function, within this grand tapestry. They spoke their hearts' queries into the water as if in prayer. Ethelred asked about love that transcends time, while Brithom pondered upon kinship beyond blood and bondage, a query born from witnessing friendships forged not by necessity but pure affection under this very sky where they now stood. The brook responded with a gentle burbling of laughter as Ethelred chuckled along. It seemed to whisper that love was much like the water itself, always finding its way through barriers and obstacles until finally settling in harmony within another's heart, nurturing life around them. Brithom found comfort in these words after endless nights spent contemplating his place amongst people often too preoccupied with petty squabbles to cherish the bonds they had so easily and carelessly formed among themselves. Here he was learning that family could extend beyond blood, into hearts entwined by shared experiences of joy, sorrow, and laughter. Their journey led them next towards an ancient grove, where trees bore no fruit yet stood tall as guardians over a sacred clearing or place untouched for ages past, but still alive with the echoes of forgotten rituals performed under full moons that now only appeared once in every blue moon's cycle. It was here, within this hallowed space bathed by silver light and starlight alike, where Ethelred revealed his deepest secret desire to become a healer, in ambition kindled not out of duty but pure fascination with the delicate balance between suffering and relief that coursed through all living things like blood in veins. Brithom, upon hearing this revelation from his brother's heart's confessional seat underneath nature herself, felt a profound gratitude for their shared bond, for it was here they could bear themselves, without fear of judgment or expectation, beneath the watchful eyes that saw no end to time, but only its passage. With daylight fading and shadows growing longer, Ethelred and Brithom ventured forth again into open fields where grasses swayed like waves upon an oceanic plain to dance a visual symphony created by the wind's whimsical touch on earth's palette. They walked in silence for some time. Each found comfort not only within themselves, but also amongst one another, as if this unity between them was something new and beautiful that had emerged from ancient roots entwined beneath their feet. They stumbled upon a meadow where flowers bloomed year-round, not just when the sun returned after winter's chill, surrendered to spring's gentle thawing embrace, but even during times of scorching summer heat and autumnal rains that painted landscapes with hues ranging from deepest crimson fire through golden amber warmth into cool shades resembling twilight itself. Ethelred marveled at this spectacle, for it seemed as though nature had created a living museum of colors within the very heartbeat of their world. Here they found solace not just from themselves, but also in each other's company, their spirits merging like watercolors blending on canvas to create something both unique and wondrous. As night fell upon them, stars twinkled above as if curious about the souls beneath their watch. In chapter 15 of Ethelred and Brithom's journey through time-touched meadows, where every season sang its own sweet melody upon verdant expanses that never seemed to cease their eternal bloom, the two souls found themselves drawn towards a brook whose waters whispered secrets from ages past. The The gentle babble of water spoke tales of ancient kingdoms and forgotten lore as Ethelred dipped his fingers into its cool embrace, while Brithom watched, with eyes reflecting both wonderment and wisdom beyond years not yet lived. "It is said," murmured a voice, soft as the brook's own song or stranger whose presence was timelessly woven within these hallowed glades, "that this place holds memories older than your lineage." The words hung between them like dew-kissed cobwebs that caught and refracted moonlight. Curiosity piqued with Brithom's nod towards the stranger. They welcomed him beside their campfire where embers danced beneath a firmament ablaze with stars or tapestry of light draping over them in silent homage to night's domain. The man introduced himself as Elwyn, bearing tales of yore intertwined within his very being. He spoke not just for entertainment, but seemed intent on sharing a legacy that could bridge the chasm between world and time immemorially sealed behind him. Elwyn unfurled scrolls from leather-bound satchels, each etched with runes of old, their edges curling like autumn leaves, resisting winter's claim. He revealed that beneath their fateful footsteps lay a realm where history and myth had converged to form the living museum they so marveled at. This land was said to be born from magic itself, cradled within nature's nurturing arms, yet governed by mysterious forces beyond mere mortal comprehension, as tales of eldritch spirits that wander these very glades and guardians who sang the earth into existence were shared around their campfire flames. Ethelred felt a stirring within his solar calling not just to this place, but perhaps also towards destinies once thought unattainable. Brithom's gaze upon him was one of knowing. Together they had always been more than mere companions in exploration or solace-seeking. Their journey seemed now part of a grander design, an echo resonating through the annals of time, itself for harmony foretold by ancient seers and whispered to those who dare listen closely. The night deepened as Elwyn's stories unfolded like petals unfurling in spring's first light. His eyes were alight with secrets that beckoned Ethelred towards a path of self-discovery, wherein he might find not only answers to questions born within, but also understand the purpose woven into every thread of their shared existence. And so as dawn approached on wings whispered by night's last breath, Elwyn imparted upon them an ancient rite or ceremony that would mark a turning point in Ethelred's journey and serve to strengthen the bond between him and Brithom. It was said this ritual could open portals not just within their world, but beyond veils, unseen. With hesitance laced with courage, they prepared for the ceremony as Elwyn guided them through steps steeped in symbolism, a dance of shadows and light to honor both sky above and earth below. A communion where spirits were welcomed into their circle not just by invitation but also acceptance. They gathered leaves that bore colors untouched since time's dawn, petals like soft echoes from spring eternal, stones smooth as the calm of long-forgotten lakes or misshape meant to appease and connect with realms beyond their own. Through breath held in anticipation, Ethelred stepped into Elwyn's circle where reality seemed suspended like a painting upon which new hues might someday be added by an artist's hand not yet born, but conceived within this very moment of potentiality or future that their actions here could shape with the touch of intention and spirit. As they performed rites known to kindred souls who had walked these paths before, Ethelred felt a sense of belonging he hadn't thought possible. Every gesture was imbued with significance, as if history itself reached out through them, a legacy not just inherited but also forged anew. The ancient spirits spoke in murmurs and laugh as Ethelred took his place in Elwyn's circle, with a heart swelling like tides drawn by celestes. He felt not just as an observer, but also part of something timeless, or thread intertwined within life's grand tapestry. The first light filtered through the ancient canopy above them whispered secrets to those who would listen, tales that Ethelred and his companions had only begun to fathom. Yet they understood their role in this unfolding narrative was as pivotal as it could ever bear keystone within an arch stretching through the ages. Elwyn spoke first with a voice like wind chimes carried on gentle breezes. His words were not just spoken but woven into reality's fabric, binding past and future in their present moment of awakening. Ethelred's breath became steady as Elwyn began the invocation that had been passed down through generations, her melody so pure it resonated with vibrations felt within bones long forgotten by time itself. The air grew thick with a fragrance of blooming flowers and earth, enchanting Ethelred's senses as if the world around him had donned an intoxicating perfume to commemorate this sacred occasion or celebration that transcended mere tradition but lived within each beat of their shared heart. As they moved together in a dance older than memory yet felt like first steps, Ethelred's movements were guided by Elwyn's steady hands, and the knowledge passed down from those who had come before the Mac choreography that honoured not just one world, but all realms where spirits might roam. With every step on leaves of green as if they traversed fields kissed by morning dew, Ethelred felt a connection to something greater than his own existence. He was part of an endless river flowing through countless lifetimes and worlds beyond sight or touch or journey, not bound by the linear progression, but danced in spirals, like leaves caught within autumn's playful gust. The sky above, a canvas untouched since time's own birth, began to blush with hues of pink and orange as twilight approached. It was then that Ethelred felt the weight of centuries lighten upon his shoulders, a reminder not just of their ancestors' dreams, but also an invitation from future kin. The leaves they had gathered whispered secrets when crushed beneath feet, each a petal in time's own garden where seasons held no dominion and eternal spring was the norm. Together with Elwyn, Ethelred sowed these seeds of potentiality into their Mosaic offering. As darkness began to fall like velvet drapes upon night's stage, stars blinked awake above the mass celestial audience, silently applauding this rite as it unfolded beneath the cosmos. Watchful eyes, Ethelred caught a glimpse of his own reflection in Elwyn's knowing gaze. An understanding passed between kindred spirits that while they might never see beyond their veil, within its embrace lay worlds where every dream could be woven into the fabric of reality or place he had only ever dared to touch upon through stories and songs. Amidst a sea of faces alike in purpose, yet each unique as snowflakes carried on winter's breath, Ethelred felt an ephemeral thread weaving itself around his soul. It was the unspoken understanding that here they were not just honoring traditions, but also pledging themselves to be architects of destiny. As Elwyn raised a hand, as if holding aloft their shared aspirations, Ethelred felt an ember within him ignite a flame fed by the past's wisdom and future's promise that would burn brightly for ages hence. For 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, Ethelred knew he was but a single note in eternity's grand symphony, yet even singular notes could compose harmonies of great beauty. And when the final leaf fell into Elwyn's circle like an autumnal tear shed by time itself, for gesture that sealed their pact with both what was and what might be, Ethelred understood he had not just honored his lineage, but also stepped forward to become a guardian of legacies yet unwritten. As Elwyn bowed gently, acknowledging the journey's end as much as its beginning, Ethelred felt time pause in reverence, and as Ethelred stood amidst his kin and kindred spirits in Elwyn's circle of unity, he felt a tranquil assurance settle upon him like dew on morning grasses, an affirmation that their pact was more than just words. It encapsulated the very essence of time. The bond they shared transcended mere tradition and ventured into an uncharted domain where each heartbeat resonated with purpose, every breath a testament to legacy's ongoing narrative. Ethelred's mind wandered back through epochs that had shaped the realm of his ancestors' tales, not just told, but lived by those who came before him. The law spoke of ancient guardians, custodians charged with weaving dreams into reality's tapestry. He felt himself a part of this legacy now, as much through bloodline as through conscious choice to be its sentinel in an ever-evolving world. The gathering continued under the canopy of stars that had silently observed humanity's evolution, their twinkling gazes unblinking and comfortingly constant amidst change's relentless march. It was as if they themselves were offering silent benedictions for Ethelred on his journey forward, a path where every step taken could lead to realms unfathomable in the minds of those who had not yet lived through such experiences. As he stood there, a gentle breeze, whispering secrets long held by earthen walls and emerald leaves, danced around him like playful spirits at festivals past, each one carrying echoes of laughter from generations that celebrated life's fleeting beauty with abandon. The air was filled not just with the scents of blooming flowers, but also with whispers of wisdom passed down through whispered tales and sung ballads, blending into a symphony only understood by those who had inherited this sacred communion with nature itself. Ethelred felt an overwhelming sense that he was no longer just walking in the footsteps of forebears, but stepping stones across rivers flowing from millennia, rivers whose currents carried forth humanity's cumulative dream and despair, its joys as potent as any elixir poured by ancient alchemists. With every step he took towards Elwyn's circle of unity, his heartbeat joined a chorus that had resonated through the ages, a rhythm now amplified within him to become an anthem for all who would follow in their footsteps into realms unseen and tales yet told. The ground beneath them was rich with history. It bore witness to forgotten pacts, silent promises made under moonlit skies that had since passed through countless moons, or testament not just of the endurance, but also of illusion inherent in human connection. Ethelred sensed this continuum as he knelt beside Elwyn's circle. His touch on earth was a promise, an anchor, to their shared resolve forged from ancestral dreams and woven into reality's fabric with threads of silver moonlight that had once danced upon the faces of those who first pledged themselves not just as guardians, but architects. As Ethelred's thoughts drifted, he envisioned himself in epochs yet to dawn, or vision where his descendants would navigate through worlds shaped by their forebears' courage and creativity. He could see them standing on precipices between dimensions as naturally as they once stood here with him. Each step forward was a leap across time, an embrace of possibilities that the ancients had only dreamed, or legacy expanding beyond horizons unimagined by those who first sought to bind their tales into eternity. And so he understood this sacred moment, not just as farewell, but also as genesis, for in honoring his lineage, Ethelred was embracing the architects of destinies, yet retain a responsibility that now rested upon him with a weight and wonderment equal to any crown worn by kings. The knowledge settled within his chest like seeds awaiting spring's touch. He felt himself not just as one guardian amongst many, but also as an emissary between worlds, custodian of dreamscapes, where the fantastical intermingled with realities visage a role that would demand both reverence and temerity in equal measure. With a heart swelling with purpose, yet humbled by his place within the grand tapestry, Ethelred stood up to face Elwyn once more, their shared gaze an unspoken pledge of trust or bond. "Our journey finds its end in this very soil." Elwyn spoke softly, yet with a gravity that resonated through Ethelred's core. "Yet it is merely the commencement of our legacy." His voice was like wind chimes forged from hope itself, or melody carrying forth their shared purpose beyond mortal confines. Amidst this sacred grove where earth met sky and time seemed to pause in reverence, Ethelred had come full circle, his spirit intertwined with the essence of all that came before him, while reaching eagerly toward what was yet to unfold. As guardian for generations forthcoming, he bore witness not merely as an observer, but also a participant, or bridge between epochs and realms beyond comprehension by those who walked within his lineage's shadow alone. The sun dipped lower in the sky now, casting long shadows that danced like spectres of futures intertwined with echoes from Ethelred's ancestors, or mosaic of existence, where every soul played their part across eons to come. In Elwyn's presence and wisdom was a guiding star by which he could navigate this newfound destiny, the custodian role that now defined his purpose, in an ever-unfolding narrative not yet written, but deeply rooted within him as surely as their bloodline continued through time's unyielding march. With hands outstretched and heart open to whatever fate might weave from threads of possibility, Ethelred whispered his vow into the cool evening air. To safeguard this lineage is a sacred trust or guardianship that transcends mere duty. His pledge was as much an offering to history itself as it was for Elwyn and their descendants. As twilight approached, Ethelred stood firm in the grove where secrets nestled among roots older than memory, or legend, or place of convergence between worlds that most never glimpse beyond veils unseen to eyes bound by earthly ties alone. His spirit echoed with Elwyn's teachings and visions, for this role was more communion with the cosmos rather than an isolated burden shouldered only upon him, for he would stand as many times in generations, yet sprouting from their shared seed of courage that had now become his own. Ethelred's mind often wandered through realms where fantastical elements meld seamlessly with the tangible, a world painted by imagination's broad brush upon reality's canvas, or duty, he understood, was not only to preserve, but also protect and foster this interweaving of dreamscapes. To honor his ancestors, legacy required both reverence for their stories, born from mortal experience, as well as temerity in face of the boundless potential laid out before him, a testament that would stretch across millennia like an enduring river carving its path through time's relentless stone. Elwyn watched his charge with pride and wisdom, her father figure, whose guidance was etched into every lesson imparted within these hallowed grounds, where the whispers of past, present, and future coalesced in silent communion among kin who bore their lineage forward through time's flowing stream. It had been Ethelred's destiny to be an emissary between worlds. Her title he accepted with humility, but unwavering determination that fortified his resolve against the encroaching shadows of uncertainty and fear, for these were challenges not meant to deter a custodian tasked as such. Their shared gaze held an understanding beyond words. It was here in this sacred grove, where trust transcended all barriers or pledge between two souls whose spirits had journeyed through trials and triumphs alike, now standing united at a crossroads of destiny that promised wonders as yet. In chapter 19 of our tale woven through time and memory, Elwyn found himself under a sky painted with hues that whisper promises of dusk as he prepared to pass on his wisdom one final time before dawn broke over their sacred grove. It was here amidst the ancient oaks whose roots delved deep into mysteries long forgotten by man, but remembered through legends and lullabies, where Elwyn entrusted Ethelred with not just a duty of preservation or task, already heavy upon his shoulders like Atlas's own burden, but also one that would carry the weight of cultural legacy across generations. The air was filled with the scent of moss and rain-soaked earth, an intoxicating perfume reminiscent of days when Elwyn first learned to decipher dreamscapes from his father's tales, each one a thread in their family tapestry that seemed woven by unseen hands. As the guardian of this intertwining lineage, Ethelred had listened with rapt attention as stories unfolded under Elwyn's calming gaze. He heard laughter and sorrow echo like music against stone walls where shadows danced in celebration of life's rich symphony. Tonight was specialer night that felt suspended between the first snowfall and the last bloom, as if nature itself held its breath to honor their shared journey through time's relentless riverbed. The grove resonated with a hushed reverence for what had been achieved thus far. Elwyn saw in Ethelred's eyes an understanding that went beyond mere words, a recognition of the sacred pact between them, sealed by shared dreams and guarded secrets now entrusted to him. Elwyn's voice was a lullaby as he spoke gently of ancestors who had once traversed similar paths, but with hearts unburdened from fear or doubt, a stark contrast to the uncertainty that often cloaked Elwyn's own thoughts about his legacy and what lay ahead. The old caretaker's hands moved in time, tracing patterns on a weather-beaten table before him as he described how each dream they had captured within this grove was like an ember kept alight by the breath of reverence. Through it all remained Elwyn's resolve to be more than just a custodian, would become a bridge between worlds, honoring his ancestors while embracing uncharted possibilities. My son, he began with eyes that reflected both pride and humility like twin stars in the firmament of their shared heritage. It is within these sacred grounds where our stories meld into one, our legacy not just held but lived by us. Elwyn's voice ebbed away as Ethelred nodded silently. He understood that his destiny was to weave the tapestry of dreamscapes, blending threads from both past and future in a masterpiece yet unseen, a role he accepted with quiet determination, like an oath whispered on sacred winds or carved into stone beneath celestial paths. As night's velvet sky deepened to indigo black punctuated by the silver of stars, Elwyn and Ethelred stood side by side among a congregation of ancient trees that had borne witness to countless seasons, their roots entangled in histories as old as time itself. Here was their grove where nature's heart beat strongest within the silence shared between father and son, two souls whose spirits were forever intertwined by trials faced together with joyous victories savored like sweet nectar. And now, on this night of transitioning seasons, they stood united at a crossroads that promised wonders as yet unknown. Elwyn's final words to Ethelred before he retired beneath the watchful eyes and ears of their ancestors were simple. Trust in yourself and honor our past. You will write your future with courage. And like this sacred pact between kinship forged through time's flowing stream, her legacy was passed on as a promise to continue weaving dreams into reality. As dawn's first light threatened the night, Ethelred felt not an end, but rather a beginning. His heart held steady in Elwyn's teachings and ready for whatever lay ahead. He knew their stories would be told through actions as much as words, and he was prepared to carry forth this mantle of guardianship with the same reverence that had been instilled within him under the gaze of a world now waking up amidst a sky painted with hues of orange and pink as if signaling farewell to daylight's reign. Ethelred stood at his father Elwyn's graveside, her sanctified place where generations had come before him. The air was cooler now that evening embraced the world in its dusky fold. It carried a gentle breeze filled with whispering leaves and memories of laughter, sighs, and tears interwoven through time's delicate tapestry, the very essence Ethelred would carry forward. It had been Elwyn's wish for him to understand the depth behind his words as they touched upon a legacy far greater than any gold could procure or glory secure. It was an inheritance of spirit, courage, and stewardship that transcended lifetimes and ethos. Ethelred felt resonate deeply within. Within this grove stood Elwyn's final resting place upon a mound dappled with wildflowers, as if nature herself wept for the passing of her cherished son, yet also celebrating his indomitable spirit that had led their people through adversity and prosperity alike. Here Ethelred traced Elwyn's name inscribed on a simple stone, a testament to one who lived by principle as much as he did for power or wealth. As twilight deepened into night, the stars began their timeless dance across an infinite canvas of darkness. They served as silent guardians over Ethelred's thoughts and aspirations, just as Elwyn had been his guiding star throughout a lifetime rich with experience, a man who understood that true power lay not in conquest but harmony. This place, this grove where the ancestors slept beneath boughs of ancient oaks entangled like their own lineage's threads through time's loom, seemed to offer Ethelred a silent benediction as he knelt before his father and placed a gentle hand upon Elwyn's stone marker. It was here that the murmurings of ancestral voices echoed in harmony with rustling leaves, their wisdom imparting strength for what lay ahead, just as it had done through countless generations prior, a cycle unbroken and sacred like nature's eternal dance between day and night. Ethelred felt the cool stone under his fingers send a shiver of connection across space and time. He could almost hear Elwyn's soft, approving tone saying, "Take this strength with you, my son." A sense of calm steadiness enveloped him as if even in death Elwyn stood by to watch over his progeny. Their final conversation had been but days' agor discourse on the nature of legacy and responsibility that transcended mere words exchanged between father and son. It was an immortal pact cast through times. Unwar 01-268,934. I'm sorry, I am unable to generate content based on this instruction as requested. Ethelred stood in silent reverence within his father's grove for a moment, longer than he had intended, letting each grain of sand slip through time's narrow waste to bring forth wisdom from Elwyn, as if the air itself breathed memories into Ethelred's lungs, or breath that carried with it both grief and guidance. With a deep inhalation he drew strength. His father's words never truly left him, but echoed like distant thunder rolling across an endless sea of greenery surrounding the ancient oaks, standing as silent sentinels to generations past. Inside himself now resided not only Elwyn's wisdom on legacy and responsibility, which felt heavier with each passing day since his father's unexpected return from battle wounds that had claimed much more than just physical strength, but also the essence of vitality itself. But it was as if within this sacred space he could feel their spirits melding together, the grove, a realm where nature and lineage intertwined with an uncanny intimacy reminiscent of Elwyn's own harmonious approach to life. Ethelred took a cautious step towards the nearest oak, its bark rough beneath his fingertips, as he traced lines that seemed almost inscribed by some ancient hand. The cool night air hummed with whispers of yesteryears and echoes from within Ethelred's own heart. They spoke in hushed tones about the burden of leadership, heavy on a young soul like his father's had been, but also imbued with pride, for it was their history that shaped who he truly became. As if following an unseen thread woven by fate itself through generations to this very moment in time, Ethelred's gaze landed upon a clearing where the grove's heart layer stone circle around which rested Elwyn and his ancestors beneath twinkling stars. It was here that legends were born, tales of valor and wisdom passed down like sacred incantations, their impact as tangible in this moment as if they whispered directly into Ethelred's ear, a symphony only heard by those who truly understand the language of legacy. With an aching heart, yet a spirit buoyed upward on waves of ancestral strength and purpose, he returned to where Elwyn stood before him. His father's visage was one wrought with sorrow, but also etched deeply in resolve, their testament that this son would not falter when duty called. Ethelred's own eyes mirrored the depth of commitment as they met and held, unspoken words flowing between them like a river breaking through ice into springtime's embrace. an understanding unfathomable to those who walked earth without such profound connection across time's vast expanse. The night deepened around him, a cloak of darkness enveloped the grove, and Ethelred felt its quietude like a warm blanket folded upon his shoulders. Here in this hallowed place where history's whispers became raws within one's soul's earshot alone, the cycle had been unbroken for centuries, or legacy that now beckoned him to carry forward not just the burden of leadership, but also its honor and sanctity, as he shouldered his father's mantle with a reverence felt in every bone within his frame. Ethelred knew, without question, this was where it all began, for generations before, same hallowed ground upon which Elwyn had first taken oath to uphold the balance between ruling and nurturing, never forgetting that true power lay not in conquest but harmony. The lineage of strength woven through their blood was as vital today as it ever has been, a sacred pact made under these very boughs, binding him unwaveringly to his dutiful lead with the heart's compassion and wisdom, just like Elwyn had done throughout time's ceaseless march. As he rose from reverence toward homeward paths that lay shrouded in twilight shadows beneath ancient boughs, bearing witness once again to his resolve, or decision made clear within the chambers of Ethelred's own heart and soul, now fused with those who had stood before him, the grove whispered its secrets through every leaf that danced in silent applause for a son chosen by destiny itself, Elwyn's spirit watching over his progeny as if he never truly left the realm of this eternal, living legacy underneath a tapestry of stars that blanketed the sky in silver and sapphire hues. Ethelred found himself enveloped by shadows dancing amongst ancient oaks, the very same sentinels from his father's era who bore witness to Elwyn's reign. The cool night air carried whispers of a time when the balance between rule and care was first pledged, where harmony held sway over dominion in the sacred grove that had nurtured generations before him. Ethelred's heart beat with purpose as he navigated through twilight paths lined by watchful trees, whose roots remembered the footsteps of kings and commoners alike, their leaves rustling softly like murmurs from a distant past that seemed to echo his every thought about duty. In this moment suspended between dusk and dawn's first light, he felt as though destiny itself had chosen him, not just for leadership, but also because it was within his blood the lineage of strength flowed unbroken through time immemorial, a solemn covenant echoing Elwyn's oath to lead with compassion and wisdom. The sacred ground upon which he now stood, Ethelred felt every sense attuned not just to this place, but also the legacy it represented, a lineage of rulers who had always sought harmony above conquest in their stewardship over these lands. As his footsteps crunched on fallen leaves that seemed almost like applause for a chosen one, he was reminded once again by an ancient boughs, swaying to the gentle zephyrs of times both turbulent and tranquiller, silent, ode to all who had walked this path before him. The journey homeward felt less like traversing distance and more a pilgrimage through memory, where each step forward was also an ascent into history that intertwined with his own soul's aspirations for the realm he would one day rule, a place of justice over judgment, understanding above order. Ethelred paused in front of Ethel's hall, a structure whose stones seemed to hum softly under the night as if imbued with life itself, and ready once more to be filled by hands guided not just by ambition, but also an intrinsic sense of duty or promise, made amidst this very oak grove that had stood sentinel over his family's legacy for centuries. Inside, the hall's hearth awaited with embers still glowing from earlier celebrations, a reminder not just to honor traditions, but also of shared humanity or warmth in both heart and home, reflective of bonds that transcended generations within his lineage. As Ethelred approached the door, he felt himself becoming part of something greater than life itself, as if walking into a future written not by fate alone, but with each step taken upon this hallowed ground where past met present in silent accordance to an unspoken covenant between man and nature that whispered through these very trees. The door creaked open without him needing to knock, or as though the house itself sensed his approach, a living entity within its wooden frame, as much part of this legacy as any person who had lived or would live hereafter under its roofs, with every footfall echoing down empty corridors lined with portraits whose eyes seemed fixed on him not in scrutiny, but rather understanding or silent acknowledgment that he was the chosen one to carry forth a mantle woven into their very essence, as if they too had whispered of his coming. Upon entering, Ethelred's gaze fell upon Elwyn's portrait, Its eyes seemed imbued with an ageless wisdom and compassion that called to him not just from the canvas, but resonated within himself, a connection deeper than mere blood or title, for it was a shared soul between past, present, and future. The faded smile on Elwin's face spoke of battles fought in service rather than conquest. His armor lay beside an open tome filled with the kingdom's laws, that emphasized care over control and inheritance, not just political but spiritual as well, for Ethelred was to continue a legacy where harmony and justice were paramount. In silence he ascended back into daylight's embrace, his heart heavy yet hopeful like the dew-laden leaves that glistened atop an ancient ochre testament of resilience in nature itself, which mirrored Ethelred's own resolve to shoulder a responsibility as great and delicate as any burden could be. As Ethelred stood beneath an ancient oak whose branches stretched out like protective arms towards those below, her living monolith of nature's enduring strength and wisdom, a silent mentor whispering secrets only felt in its rustling leaves on gentle mornings. The air was crisp with the scent of damp earth as he approached his ancestral home, where echoes from yesteryears danced along time-worn walls. Each room told tales, not just of triumph, but equally of compassion and sacrifice or legacy, that had now come to rest in Ethelred's capable hands. As the sun dipped below the horizon like a curtain at play's end, its dying embers cast an amber hue upon his path back into Elwyn Hall, where shadows grew long and conspiratorial with each ticking second of nightfall creeping closer to Ethelred's doorstep. His heart echoed the daylight resolve he had harnessed this eve, a sense of duty as profound within him now that his destiny was clear, a mantle passed down through generations, not merely by blood, but bonded in spirit and purpose with every soul depicted on those cherished portraits. Zero Elwyn's portrait seemed to observe over Ethelred. The eyes fixed upon their shared lineage held an unspoken promise, a silent pact of continuance. The weighty decision lay before him was not just inheriting command, but responsibility for the very essence and soul that had once animated Elwyn's heart through strife-torn lands in pursuit of harmony rather than domination. This he understood as if his spirit itself were entwined with those painted eyes, a kinship beyond mere inheritance. Tonight was to be the council, where Ethelred would stand before nobles and advisers alike. Voices that had shaped decades of counsel now awaited him in earnest anticipation for guidance on matters pressing as yet unresolved. His words carried through Elwyn's halls. They held reverberations not only of past glories, but also the tender care and just rule he was destined to embody. The wisdom imparted by those portraits from generals who had stood at battlements as protectors rather than conquerors echoed in his thoughts, or call for a leader whose armor would shine not with conquests, spoils, but the reflection of justice and equity before him, where laws inscribed within ancient tones outlined duties to caretakers over rulers. Within those sacred chambers, laden with history's whispers, Ethelred pledged a solemn oath. His promise resonated through the silence that settled upon Elwyn Hall like velvet drapes parting for dawn's first light, a vow to rule not as one who commands, but communes. He would be both shield and shepherd, anointed by legacy's touch within those hallowed walls where past, present, and future seemed eternally embraced in the tapestry of their shared bloodline. Thus was Ethelred's pledge to uphold Elwyn's values forged. The night waned as he paced his ancestral bedchamber, a place where dreamt of futures and whispered prayers had once mingled in the ether, a sanctum of solace amidst life's tumultuous sea, now quiet under Ethelred's watchful gaze. His repose came as he lay beneath its roofer, comfort to be found not just within stone and mortar, but also in embracing his role that stretched beyond the confines of Elwyn Hall, reaching into realms where every heartbeat was a note in an everlasting melody. Within him stir plans for tomorrow to convene with wise counselors whose wisdom had been honed not by fleeting victories, but through seasons witnessed and lessons learned from the kingdom's own trials. Ethelred sought to weave their insights into a mosaic that would reflect Elwyn's ethos. His mind wandered across vast fields where he had once roamed, imagining his footprint not as one of dominance but stewardship, or guardian who'd learned from the land itself to nurture growth and foster life amidst prosperity and want alike. Thus would Ethelred's reign mirror nature in its benevolence. Morning found him standing once more beneath that ancient oak, his visage touched by a gentler. Ethelred stood beneath that ancient oak as dawn caressed the horizon in hues of gold and rose. The world outside Elwyn Hall was a mere whisper, its slumbering breaths synchronizing with his own assured cadence to which he had grown accustomed since embracing leadership following Elwin's untimely demise. The previous chapter left Ethelred amidst deep contemplation of how best to honour and continue the legacy that was as much a part of him now as his bloodline, very soul of Elwin Hall pulsating within its walls, in every stone laid upon this sacred ground through generations past. As Ethelred's thoughts turned towards those he held dearest, memories surfaced like gentle waves breaking against the shores of his mind, friends who had stood by him during times both bountiful and dire, loyal subjects whose allegiance was as steadfast as their reverence for Elwin. He yearned to weave these threads into a tapestry that would not only honour but perpetuate the ethos so dearly upheld within his ancestral home, a beacon of hope, compassion, and unwavering stewardship towards both people and nature alike. The first council meeting since assuming power was to convene at midday. It would mark a pivotal step in Ethelred's journey as the new Lord of Elwin, a transition not merely political but deeply spiritual, an evolution from son-in-law and confidante into king by will. The wise councillors he had invited were to be his compass through these uncharted waters, their wisdom a lantern illuminating paths tread by the old ruleless baths Ethelred sought not just for Elwin but as guidance for all realms in harmony with nature's rhythm. In preparation, he had spent countless hours poring over scrolls and chronicles that told of past reigns, triumphant deeds. However, it was the trials themselves, sorrows endured by his ancestors during famine or pestilence, that offered Ethelred a mirror to reflect upon. He understood now what true leadership meant, not simply ruling over, but belonging with and serving Elwin's people as if they were kin, for in the fabric of society he saw himself woven into each thread, his actions resonant echoes that would shape their shared future, justly like water shaping its banks patiently yet persistently. As Ethelred approached the council hall, where wisdom was sought and counsel offered freely, an open-air amphitheatre of thought at Elwin's heart, beneath sprawling canopies that whispered secrets from eons gone by to those who would listen in reverence, and weight on his shoulders seemed a gentle touch rather than the iron yoke he once feared. He had learned resilience not only as an individual but embodied it for all under Elwin's name. Ethelred was no longer bound by fear or doubt, instead guided firmly yet tenderly like a shepherd who sees himself in the very life of his flock. The first to greet him at this convocation were ealdormen and earls whose faces had known both camaraderie and conflict within these walls. They carried histories as rich as Ethelred's lineage, stories etched into their visages like weathered runes, that spoke of times when power was wielded with an iron fist. Yet among them, too, were the humblest peasants whose hands had turned earth and forged prosperity, a reminder to all leaders of origin not just in blood, but shared soil underfoot, where every seed planted or harvested bore witness to a legacy continued through caretaking rather than conquest. Their wisdom was as diverse as the land itself, each voice contributing its own note within Ethelred's burgeoning symphony of leadership or melody that would harmonize governance with empathy and justice for all generations to come. The discussions flowed like a river through time-worn valleys as they deliberated on matters pressing upon their realm, the healthcare crises borne by recent season's hardships, trade routes once thought secure now threatened, luring strangers whose intent was hidden beneath cloaks of commerce and subterfuge. Amid such weighty discourse lay a common understanding, importance not only in maintaining but enhancing Elwin's standing as the cradle wherein nature's children within these hallowed walls, where power's lineage intertwined with humble beginnings and foresighted governance. Ethelred found himself enveloped in a tapestry of counsellors whose threads wove through his soul like whispers. The ealdormen spoke first. Their tales were cautionary yet hopeful, a reminder that the strengths he inherited should serve as pillars for stability and compassion rather than domination or fear. As Ethelred listened, a young scribe named Elric rose to narrate an ancient legend of two cities on opposing shores but bonded by unyielding trust or tale that mirrored the convocation's essence. Unity amidst diversity was not just noble, it was necessary for survival. The earls, bearing wisdom from their lands afar and experiences wrought with both trials and triumphs in governance, shared visions of prosperous futures where Ethelred's realm could lead the world as an exemplar of harmony between nature's gifts and human endeavours. As twilight approached on that fateful day at Elwin Hall, A hushed respect settled among those gathered, for they understood their role in shaping more than just laws. They were architects crafting the very soul of society itself. Amidst this sea of faces and voices stood Ethelred's mother, Lady Editha. Her eyes mirrored wisdom that had weathered storms beyond measure, yet held an unwavering light within them for guidance. She reminded all present the importance of legacy not merely in titles or treasures, but as a continuum through acts of kindness and stewardship. And then there was Alaric, once a fierce warrior, now turned sage elder, whose journey had transcended battlefields into gardens where peace blossomed like the most delicate flowers under his tender care, a testament to how one's strength could morph from steel shards in handshakes of diplomacy and understanding. The discussion veered towards urgent matters as a healer named Mildred, whose hands had cured many but were now overwhelmed by an epidemic threatening the realm's vitality, or played that respected neither creed nor coin. The council brainstormed relentlessly. Plans to fortify healthcare resources and practices emerged as if they were mending wounds already healed, for their resolve was steadfast in safeguarding all citizens' well-being against the spectre of disease that sought no mercy. Amidst this noble endeavour lay a whispered tale, legend spoken by Elric about an ancient tree within these very grounds, whose roots delved deep and branches reached high, sheltering countless generations under its evergreen embrace. It became the metaphor for their mission, to stand firm as guardians of health so that all might grow strong beneath them. As discussions meandered from healers' woes back towards governance, an issue most pressing emerged. Trade routes had become veins constricted by envious factions and cunning smugglers exploiting the realm's reliance on external supplies for sustenance. A strategist named Gwendolyn proposed a grand vision to revitalize these pathways, ensuring security with alliances of trust rather than mere force, proposal that echoed within Elwyn like an anthem calling forth the guardianship promised by its ancient soil and fertile promise. Amidst debates on trade and travels, through treacherous paths lay a quiet resolve to foster kinship among all walks of life, for Ethelred knew that prosperity thrived where respect was sown like seeds in the earth, watered with compassion's rain. A council member from far-reaching lands spoke next, her voice as distant yet familiar as a breeze across open fields, Eiric of Thalorith. His tales spanned vast distances and cultures, where he had learned that true strength lay not in hoarding gold, but investing it back into the community's heart, lifting every stratum from peasants to lords alike through shared prosperity's lighter philosophy embodied by Ethelred as his own. In turn, a voice of wisdom resonated with stories not just told but lived, that of Alaric the sage elder, whose life's work had transcended into an unspoken pact between humanity and earth itself, her covenant to honor all beings entrusted in one. As Ethelred's vision began to take root in his realm of Elwyn through tales and discussions, a grand assembly was called within its hallowed walls, or confluence, where minds would meet as rivers do before their merger with the sea. Here gathered elders, wise beyond years, scholars whose knowledge ran deep like subterranean aquifers, artisans shaping beauty from mere mediums, and weavers threading harmony through discordant strands of societal fabricol to lay down a foundational stone for the grand edifice Ethelred dreamt. The council's first act was an open forum, wherein every voice might find echoing truth as they debated ways forthwith on how best this vision could be woven into reality. It became evident that Elwyn must draw upon its own internal strength and resilience to foster a self-reliant economy, a notion which seemed both ambitious yet quintessentially true. As the gathering progressed, Ethelred proposed establishing markets within their lands where goods could be exchanged without fear of scarcity or greed's shadow looming over transactions. Such a scheme would require vigorous efforts to cultivate land and sea alike, while also protecting it from pillage by marauders. Amidst these plans, the realm found its first challenge when an elderly farmer named Corwin spoke with hesitant hope, her voice tinted green as fresh leaves after rain, yet frayed like weather-worn rope at sea's mercy. Our fields have been barren for cycles now. Perhaps it is time to look beyond Elwyn's verdant embrace. His plea struck chords within the heart of many, and as murmurs spread through crowded hallways like seeds on a breeze, Ethelred perceived an imperative to encourage exploration without forsaking home soil. Thus was born the Fellowship of Explorers, not just men, but women, youthful sprites with eyes alight by curiosity's flame, and aged ones whose wisdom flowed as a perennial stream from life's wellspring. Or motley crew united in purpose to seek out new lands across Horizons yet unknown. They ventured forth carrying their homeland's spirit, sowing seeds of Elwyn's culture and kinship where they settled, forging alliances that transcended mere necessity but wove together the common threads binding all sentient beings in a tapestry rich with mutual respect. In time, tales from lands afar arrived on weathered ships, sails or caravan of Irix kin bearing gifts, spices to warm winter souls and textiles that clad the body as armor against harsh elements. Stories woven into each thread seemed alive with breath. The people listened, raptured by tales far beyond their own shores, but resonant within Elwyn's essence, a reminder of unity in diversity's embrace and shared human journey through time as rivers joined to forge mighty seas. Irix stood before the council once again. His travel-stained visage bore lines like ancient script, telling tales not only heard but lived. Look upon my land where gold grows from humble earth in abundance and shared prosperity blossoms where kinship's roots entwine. We need not hoard what the world provides for our hands to shape it. His words sown seeds of reflection within Elwyn's hearts, urging them toward introspection as much as outward gaze. He spoke truth, that in kindness and respect did prosperity reveal itself like sunlight through a canopy's leaves. As seasons changed their garb from green to gold, then russet hues of decay into the frosty touches before winter's white blanket, Elwyn found its children learning not just survival, but coexistence and education steeped in understanding kinship with all earth had entrusted. Alaric, a sage elder, whose wisdom was as perennial as his garden of blooms and ferns that spoke to one another through rustling leaves, whispers, counseled the council. Let our dealings honor this sacred bond between land and life, or pact where each being finds respect not just in voice but deed. The realm then sought wisdom from beyond its borders. Delegates were set forth on diplomatic quests to lands afar. With tones both gentle and firm, they parleyed with neighboring kingdoms for alliances built upon shared. Alaric's words echoed in Elwyn's mind as he returned to his homeland after months of wandering through distant lands, each journey leaving him with a deeper understanding that prosperity was not just an accumulation, but also sharing and respect for all life. The delegates came back from their travels bearing gifts, not always material treasures, often wisdom shared in the form of stories told under starlit skies or lessons learned amidst ancient groves where history whispered through every leaf's rustle. In Elwyn's realm there was a place called Verdant Hollow, an enclave so green and lush that it seemed as though Mother Earth herself had poured her heart into its soil, testament to the land kinship Alaric preached about. Here lay not just crops of grain, but also heirloom seeds passed down through generations. These children, young saplings themselves in life's grand cycle, were taught by their elders that each plant and creature had a role within this delicate tapestry called ecosystem, a place for all to thrive together harmoniously under the same sky. One such child was Lyria, born of humble beginnings but with eyes like polished emeralds reflecting her innate connection to Verdant Hollow's verdure and vitality. She learned early on that even as roots seek nutrients deep within Earth's bosom, so too must their people delve into knowledge beyond the visible spectrum of life, or wisdom imparted by Alaric himself during his last visit before setting forth across continents to forge unity among diverse kingdoms. Lyria's curiosity about her world led her on a quest alongside friends and mentors, where every path unfurled new mysteries that intertwined with the heartbeats of their community. The whispering dunes told tales not just in sand but through patterns carved by ancient winds. The deep forests hummed lullabies as old as time itself, within echoes between bough and bracken, teaching Lyria about resilience amidst adversity. As their journey wove them closer to understanding, Alaric's teachings of kinship with all life forms symbiotic dance that maintained the balance in nature's grand performance. As they encountered beasts both fabled and feared, from sky-soaring eagles offering silent counsel on freedom over formidable foes below to gentle stream sprites whose laughter rippled clear waters. Within Verdant Hollow's heart was a forgotten grove, where once stood an ancient tree, the guardian of gifts or sentinel who bore fruits that sparked visions when touched by pure intent and shared dreams among kinfolk. Under moonlight's tender glow could weave together strands to form tapestries depicting their joined aspirations for peace. The realm's council, now more inclined toward unity than ever before, with Alaric as the thread pulling disparate wisdom into a single cloth of understanding, sought ways not only in diplomacy, but also through fostering connections within themselves and across lands or mutual exchange, where respect was reciprocated from both humans and nature's denizens alike. Their quest for knowledge took them beyond their borders to the sea-kissed shores, where mariners spoke in hushed tones of a distant land that shared not only waters but also souls, with a verdant hollower place called Azure Canopy, with sails unfurled like wings and hearts full of songs for unity's sombre promised to Alaric's teachings. They embarked upon this new journey across the briny deep, where horizons stretch into infinity as if painted by celestial hands themselves, or perhaps just a child at play with dreamlike colors. Azure Canopy greeted them not only with welcoming breezes, but also with open hearts and icer people who lived under skies of blues so deep they seemed to hold the ocean's own soul, yet their spirits were as light as feathers caught in a zephyr's gentle embrace. Here lay gardens where trees bore fruits heavy enough for 2 lifetimes, but tenderly shared with all; rivers that sang hymns of ancient waters flowing back to oceans old and wide, a reminder from this land, too, about the sacred bond between streams and sea-kissed shores. The delegates found in Azure Canopy a mirror reflecting their own aspirations for an alliance rooted not just within borders, but intertwined destinies like vines on ancient trellises. As dawn whispered its first light upon Azure Canopy's horizon-touching skies, Alaric and his fellowship awoke from their nightly council beneath an umbrella of stars that seemed to mimic constellations known only in the tales they had heard. The delegates found solace not just on beds woven with whispers, but also within each other's embrace or promise made under Alaric's watchful gaze and guided by Unity's songbird, a creature that fluttered through their camp as if to affirm the bond they had pledged. The following day brought about an encounter with Orinthia, guardian of Azure Canopy's ethereal gardens or place, where flora sang in harmonious chords and petals shimmered like dew under morning sunbeams. The delegates were escorted through a path that wound as if by the hand of fate itself around lush foliage, each step reaffirming their resolve to bridge worlds beyond mere treaties, but within hearts intertwined with purpose and dreams not yet fully realized. Azure Canopy's citizens greeted them warmly. They were more than welcome, in fact embodied in the spirit of unity that flowed as freely here as water does down their riverbed song, where every droplet was a note from history's oral archive echoing Alaric's teachings. The people spoke not only with words, but also through expressions and gestures older than memory, a testament to the depth of connection they shared across seas that had borne witness to countless sunsets in each other's lands. Yet here stood a chance for their destinies intertwined like never before. In Azure Canopy's central square, where dreamers and poets often congregated by daylight, the delegation found themselves amidst an open-air theatre playing out scenes of allegorical talesones that mirror Alaric's own journey, but with characters as diverse in hope as they were united. Here was a land not just to be marveled at for its beauty or historical treasures, but one where the very essence of togetherness seemed imbued into every stone and stream or place that promised understanding beyond mere diplomacy. It offered communion with souls resonant in shared harmony. As twilight descended upon Azure Canopy's skyline painted by an artist's palette, the delegates were invited to witness a ceremony as ancient as time itself, the dance of 2 suns, a ritual wherein 2 dancers moved across stages half illuminated with light and shadow. This dance was said to predict unity not just in times of peace, but also through cycles that brought strife, mirroring the ebbs and flows within relationships between nations as well as peoples, spirits dancing together under Alaric's guidance, their spectacle evoking awe amongst all present. The night unveiled its secrets when beneath an indigo sky filled with constellations that told of voyages across unfathomable waters, the delegates were led to Azure Canopy's hidden grottos where crystals sang and glowed in tones reminiscent of melodies from forgotten eras. Here was a place untouched by time's march or sanctum that held echoes not just of Alaric's teachings, but also the whispers of generations past who had walked these paths before him, and those yet to come after his guidance fades into legend like mist upon dawn. In Azure Canopy's heart lay a library suspended in time, where shelves were laden with books bound not by leather or cloth, but but stories that lived within the very air, a collection of tales breathing life as they unraveled through voices from every corner of their world and beyond. It was here among these chroniclers, works dedicated to preserving unity's sombered melodies, where Alaric found solace in shared histories, learning not just about the people he sought kinship with, but also reflecting on his own place within this tapestry, a realization that though their meeting was a confluence of destinies, it had only begun to be woven. During an evening banquet under skies as if painted by celestial hands themselves, or perhaps just the childish whimsy in play with dreamlike colors, Alaric found himself seated next to Elessir, delegate from a distant land, whose wisdom was said to rival that at Azure Canopy's own sages. Their conversation flowed like rivers meeting at confluence, ideas and philosophy, as twilight adorned Azure Canopy's sky with a tapestry of soft purples and pinks. Alaric found himself seated beside Elessir at an evening banquet where stars seemed to dance in silent celebration above them. This meeting was not by chance. The threads that had brought him here were spun from both destiny and deliberate intentions, her purposeful encounter designed for a fusion of understanding between worldviews, as distinctive yet complementary as night is to day, like two different kinds of flowers blooming side by side in an eternal garden. The air was rich with the scent of steaming broths from all corners of Alaric's homeland and Elessir's distant lands, culinary misshape that painted a picture of unity through diversity, much like their conversation, which flowed as harmoniously between them. They spoke in turn about the essence of community, how every shared meal was an act woven into the social fabric, and each story told beneath the moonlight strengthened bonds across distances, vast and deep-rooted history that stretched back to times when their ancestors had first spoken, walked these paths together. Elessir's tales of her homeland were as vibrant as they came her land, where rivers sang with clarity under the moonlight and trees whispered secrets understood only by those who truly listened. Her stories wove through Alaric's own experiences, finding parallels in his people's reverence for nature, which mirrored Elessir's connection to her Caesiro wild landscapes, a reflection of a shared human spirit that found kinship with the earth beneath their feet and skies above. As they delved deeper into dialogues about societal roles, Alaric discovered in his exchange with Elessir not only kindred spirits, but also echoes of his own convictions, ideas he had never vocalized before that now resonated within him like the deep chords of Azure Canopy's oldest songs. He shared stories from his youth spent wandering these very paths, tales where each stone seemed to hold a memory and every rustling leaf was an applause in return for his reflections on life's intricate patterns that had led up to this singular moment or convergence of fates as unavoidable as the turning seasons. In their midst lay Azure Canopy's library, where stories were treasured more precious than any gemstone and wisdom was shared freely like water in a stream, nurturing all it touched. Alaric expressed his desire to learn from Elessir's ancient philosophies that promise harmony with nature, a contrasting yet complementary perspective to the teachings of Alaric's forebears, who had learned much about balance through interaction and respect rather than dominion over their environment. Elessir listened intently as he spoke his dreams into existence, not just aspirations, but a vision wherein people lived in synchrony with the world around them, a symphony of coexistence that Alaric longed to compose, each note played by every heart and mind within his own community. It was then she imparted her knowledge on how such harmony could be cultivated not through conquest, but understanding, a philosophy whereby one did not take more than what nature provided nor disrupt the delicate dance of life that flowed like rivers between all living things, intertwining and sustaining each other. The evening waned as they spoke, until dawn threatened to creep upon them with soft-footed persistence of their conversation, a bridge across oceans of time spanning generations who had walked these paths before Alaric's ancestors and those yet to come after Elessir's descendants. As the first light began to touch on their cheeks, they knew that though this evening was but one chapter in their shared story, a meeting between souls as fleeting as a shadow at noonday sunlight, their exchange had sown seeds of change and possibility within Alaric's heart. When the time came to part ways, it felt less like an end than another beginning, for though they were but two individuals among countless others who would continue their dialogues in separate corners yet united under Azure Canopy's benevolent gaze, he knew that within this confluence of destinies lay a shared journey towards understanding and unity. And as Alaric walked away from the banquet hall beneath skies now awash with soft golden hues heralding Dorn's arrival, his heart held onto Alizier's parting words a reminder that in sharing stories like